Hey you folks, Quilly18 here, and welcome to our very first Project Caprica video. Project Caprica is going to be a project to make a 4X space game. 4X stands for Explore, Expand, Exploit, and Exterminate. It is the classic formula of games such as Civilization and Master of Orion and Stellaris and things like that. Specifically, we're going to be making a space version, and specifically, we're going to be going for something that feels very, very, very similar to something like Master of Orion. In fact, that is going to be the basis for the core skeleton of our game layout. And by doing something like that, it's going to save us the trouble of doing the basic sort of game design element, and we can focus more on the how do we make this, not what do we make, but how do we make it. It's going to be a really good guide. Of course, we're still going to have to do plenty of customized content and things like that, because we're not going to be a direct one-to-one clone, but that will be our inspiration. So if you haven't played Master of Orion, I definitely recommend you do it. In particular, Master of Orion 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. Although the newest, just Master of Orion, just called Master of Orion, is also pretty spiffin' good. Okay, this video is not going to have any programming, I don't think. Mostly what we're going to do is we're going to create a bunch of objects in the scene to get our sort of our organization for this project down. Because this is going to be a game that's going to have kind of many different views going on. We're going to have a galactic view. We're going to have a solar system view, which may or may not be a subset of the galactic view. We're going to have a view of sort of a planet, our colony management screen. We're going to have a technology screen, a diplomacy screen. We might have all kinds of screens like that. And how are we going to organize this? There is the idea that we could do actual scene changes from one to another, but I don't think that's going to be the most convenient way to organize things. I think we're more or less just going to have a single main scene. And what I'm envisioning, and I haven't actually done a project like this before, so we're going to possibly figure out some pros and cons of doing things this way as we go forward. But what I'm envisioning is that in our scene over here, we're going to have multiple sort of, well, the top level object may or may not be just an empty game object. I mean, there definitely won't be any sort of, visual content as part of this top level game object. There might be some scripts attached to it for some management aspects. I could certainly see that going on. But so we'll have something, it'll be like galaxy view will be one. And then we're going to have another one that is going to be something like the research view. And so on and so forth. And what we'll do is we'll toggle them on and off depending on where the user wants to be. So there's advantages and disadvantages doing this. This will mean that everything will sort of always be loaded, right? So even when you're on the galaxy view, the research view will still be loaded in the background. Now, that might lead to more overhead in terms of amount of memory that is active and occupied. The thing is, I think that things like the research view and the galaxy view, well, I was going to say the research view and the diplomacy view and so on and so forth, but even the galaxy view, I don't think will actually represent that much true memory usage. And the big advantage to doing this way is just toggling the sort of top level objects on and off is that we don't load and unload stuff constantly. So you don't have to do a bunch of reads from disk. You don't have to invoke the garbage collector the same way. And I think that this will actually lead to something more performant. Now, we've said it before, we'll say it again, premature optimization is the root of all evil. In this case, though, I think this is not, I'm sort of guessing that will probably come out ahead. And these sort of broad ideas about organization are actually something you want to think about for optimization. But I also think it's going to be easier to work with things this way. If this turns out to be bad because it turns out all of these use up a lot of memory as we go, then we can make changes where we actually unload it. We'll have some the centralized function is going to be responsible for turning the research view on and off. Well, that one function can be changed to instead, okay, load the research view, and then destroy the research view object, or something of that nature. And do keep in mind, when this is going to be disabled like this, no CPU effort or GPU effort is going to be exerted in maintaining this object. None of those scripts are going to be running. None of the objects are going to be rendered, not even sort of invisible rendered or anything like that, so it should be okay. So we'll have a few of those. I don't know, we'll have a diplomacy view. Oops. And I guess we'll have a colony view as well. I'm pretty sure all these things are things that we will need. These, and by view, I sort of mean like the full screen display. This is the screen, right? It's the research screen, it's the diplomacy screen, it's the colony screen. But the term view in this case, I'm still going to use as opposed to screen, because conceivably we might not want some one of these to be full screened. It might be windowed. Now, as an example of that, in classic Master of Orion, so you have the whole galaxy. When you clicked on a system or when you clicked on a fleet, it opened a window of that representation. So you didn't have a full screen view of the system. To contrast that, if you've played Stellaris, in Stellaris, when you click on a star, you actually sort of zoom into the entire system. The system view becomes your full screen. However, the overlays, right, the menu options and everything stay the same. And I think this galaxy view is going to be that. It's going to have, within it, it's going to have something like the sort of UI. In fact, I might call it something like UI overlay, to really emphasize the fact that it's on top of everything else. And this is likely going to be its own canvas. So this is going to be stuff like your buttons, right? Your toolbar at the top and the bottom of the screen. The toolbar at the top might have your current resources, like, and hell, we could again, I'm using this as a mock-up. One of the things with game programming and game design is don't sit down and start writing code right away. The best way is often to just grab a notebook, go somewhere where you don't have a computer, and just start jotting things down in your notebook and you know, drawing screen mock-ups and things like that. However, I'm using this as our initial screen mock-up. Again, I'm trying not to program today, but we can sort of do a basic kind of layout and get a sense of, okay, this is sort of how we want the game to look, and what does that imply for functions? So this is going to be something like top bar, bottom bar. Actually, what I should do is actually make this explicitly a canvas, and we'll call this canvas UI overlay. So delete that and do this. And we'll probably make extensive use of multiple canvases, canvases, some which will be the sort of normal screen space overlay, and some might be world space, in particular for putting things like, I don't know, little labels on top of planets or things like that. Even then, I'm not sure. We'll play that one by ear and see how we feel about that. So there's the UI overlay, and then I guess there'd be panel. There's no difference between a panel and an image. Panel by default is going to fill up the entire canvas, or the entire parent. Image does not. And honestly, the toolbar may or may not even need to be a kind of panel, but okay, we'll just use an image. It's going to be fine. This is going to be the top bar. And so obviously this is something that's going to be, I'm going to hold both Alt and Shift over here. It's going to be attached to the top and stretch the side here. And it's going to have a certain amount of height. I don't know, 32 pixels. Some height of some kind. We don't know what it's going to be like, but there's going to be some sort of bar on the top that's going to have a variety of different, text elements. We want probably something, I guess locked to the top left corner like that. There'll probably be a series of things, money, 1, 2, 3, energy, 1, 2, 3, whatever these things will be, there'll be something like that, and there'll probably be some other piece of text that's going to be, not inside of this one, but there. This one will be right aligned and right aligned this way, and so this will be something like turn, 1, 2, 3, or something of that nature. No, there'll be some sort of height. I guess let's just visually put it something like that. Again, we'll figure that out, but there'll be something kind of like that up there. This also might be where we have our button for, like your menu button, right? Here, tell you what. This right align text, I'm just going to grab this, shove it over a bunch, and then put in a button, which of course will have to be styled later. Do menu, and this thing is going to have a width of something more like that. And the sprite might change and things. This height, of 30. Can we switch to about 24? Yeah, there you go. So something like that. And actually these text buttons will look a lot better if their height is set to exactly 24 and they were aligned that way. I mean, again, the visuals don't matter at this point because we're too early for that, but, you know, let's pretend. And I'll move you over this way because it's sort of bothering me. Okay, so there'll be something like that, and then we'll have some other sort of bottom bar. And I don't think for the bottom bar, I don't actually think we'll use an imager thing. I think we'll just create it as an empty. Call it bottom bar. And grab this, hold Alt and Shift. We're going to have you attached to the bottom like this. And full stretch, and that's going to be okay. And then inside of that, we'll have buttons, probably in some sort of grid setup. We'll figure out how that works in a second. So if we want a horizontal layout group where, I mean, middle centered. There we go. Turn that off. Yeah, this will be too big. Yeah, some sort of setup maybe like that. We'll set your height to 50 so it all lines up properly. So we got some buttons at the bottom for various functions, right? So this is going to be our like your empire management button, right? Empire or planet lists or whatever. Or actually, they might be different. Empire might be something like where you see your full empire's economy, set your tax rate, maybe change your government type or something like that. Planets. And this will be the case where we go into other 4X games, like Master of Orion, like Civ, like Stellaris and things, and see what kind of buttons they have. Oh yeah, okay, we need these things. These will probably all be features that we're going to have somewhere in there. Research, diplomacy, espionage. I feel like, oh, it was probably something, I'm trying to remember sort of, Moo. I think it was something then like reports or something like that. You know, so we got some sort of screen layout that's like this. So we got this UI that's part of Galaxy View. Inside of Galaxy View, I'll probably also have another what? How do we want our planet pop-up to work? I mean, I'll probably want it in something that's basically looks like a window. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. You can write your own thing with sprites, hell, you can do it all in 3D and things, but we may as well use the UI tools that are available to us. So I think I'll actually implement it as just another UI canvas. And this is just going to be called, this is going to be the system view. And it's going to be inside the Galaxy View. And this thing is going to have a window, and I mean, there's no special thing for a window. Let's start by calling it a panel. Although I should have just, I'm going to be making so many changes that I should have just saved myself a couple of clicks by starting it as a image. That's going to be fine. We'll have it. I'll have it set to the center to start off with, and say a width of 400 and a height of 300. This is going to be something vaguely like this is going to be our planet screen. We'll make this just a little darker for whatever purposes. Inside of this, we'll put in a other image, which is going to be at the top and stretched. This is going to be our title bar, like that. And we'll implement some sort of thing where if you click on this or some other part of something, you can drag it around. And then it's going to have some sort of image like this that is stretched, except it's going to have 24 pixels at the top. I'm just going to set this to a horrendous purple color, sort of a standard like missing image color. And what we're going to want to do is this sprite here we're going to feed it probably a 3D render of the system view. Might want this to be a little bit bigger. I mean, people have larger monitors now. By 400? I don't know, 450? That feels a little bit righter. Okay, so I don't know. We could have this be full screen. We could have it not be full screen. The thing is, if we decide to have it full screen, and we might logically want to just, you know, separate it out this way, we can. This hierarchy just makes it really easy for us to be like, oops, not event system. Undo that. The system view. For us to be like, oh, from here, you can still see these bottom buttons, and if you click on one, we're just going to go and disable the entire galaxy view, including that. We'll reorganize it, right? But again, I'm sort of trying to think in my head, and I don't have it open. I should have, in a sense, maybe I should have taken screenshots of things like Master of Ryan. But here, we're just going to sort of go with how I vaguely remember. So we've got the system view. So when we click on a planet from here, it'll open the system view for that. When we click on a star from here, it'll open the system view for it. And then when we click on a planet on here, then what we'll do is we'll turn off the galaxy view entirely and load up the colony view, which isn't going to have the same sort of buttons. Instead, it'll have some other layout, which is going to be, I don't know. I mean, it's clearly going to have its own sort of AI canvas in here, or UI canvas in here, which with a bunch of stuff. So if you haven't played these games before, there's going to be, like, I'll probably take the model that dates back to ages and ages and ages ago, where the population of your planet, each unit of population is an actual worker that can be assigned to be a farmer, an industrial worker, or a scientist, and you can click and drag between them. You know, list of buildings. Hey, so okay, let's sort of plot things out over here. We're going to have some sort of image, which is going to be a background for something in the corner over here that is going to be a certain size. This might be like our stats area. And then over here, maybe we drag the people around. And then over here, we have the building list, which includes both buildings we have as well as buildings we'd like to add. I don't know what this layout will be, but there's going to be some sort of thing like that. There'll need to be some sort of back button. We'll figure out something with the escape button. We'll have we'll sort of create some sort of stack of callbacks for the escape button, so that when you open a window, it will add a function call to the escape button stack for closing that window. So as soon as you hit escape, it calls that topmost function and then removes it from the stack. That way you can have this sort of like nested thing where you escape out of a bunch of stuff. And then if you're just on the galaxy view with nothing open and you hit escape, then it'll open the main menu instead. Oh, right. I was like, why is it looking all stupid? Because we'd have to turn these off, right? Boom. Okay, so we have a colony view, and then we have other views like this. So this is the sort of thing I'm looking at. And I think this is going to work kind of okay. When a view becomes enabled or disabled, well, actually, I don't know if there's anything we need to do on disable. But when a view becomes enabled, in particular something like colony view, so it'll have to run something. So I know I said I wouldn't write any code. This is more or less going to be true, but we can probably assume that colony view will have some sort of, you know, script on it. And just as an example, again, we're just trying not to go too programmy here. Starting up Visual Studio, this might take some time. Normally I have these things opened already. I gotta say, like, I'm super happy about the change to Visual Studio as the standard editor in Unity. Like, it's about time, but at the same time, like, mono develop, at least it opened up instantly. So what we're gonna want is void OnEnable. So this gets called every time we become active. Including possibly on scene load, right? If by default, if you have your objects just normally enabled, right? When the scene loads, either program starts or you switch to the scene, for OnEnable will run. In fact, OnEnable runs before start. Start gets called before update runs the very first time. So on a normal frame update, when update is about to be called, it checks to say, hey, has start ever been called on this object? Oh, it hasn't? So let's call start first and then update. Whereas OnEnable happens the second you enable something. The second you set something to set active, this gets called immediately. So there's some funny kind of timing things. But so we probably want this, because this is like one-time initialization. Use this for one-time initialization after OnEnable is called. So in practice for our views, I don't think we're going to use start because of the timing, right? But so what we probably are going to have is we're probably not going to use start, and we'll probably have something like public. We don't know what our classes will be. Some object. Here, I'll just call it object. We use the base thing over here. That's fine. Active colony or just colony. Something of this nature. And then what we're going to do here is update our data elements based on the selected colony. So when we click on a planet in the galaxy view, or more accurately in the system view, when we click on a planet, what it's going to do is it's going to set the colony view's colony to the correct colony, the correct planet, and then it's going to activate this colony view. And then OnEnable will then be able to take our active colony and feed into our various data elements. Now, whether this OnEnable does the work, or it'll be part of an OnEnable on a child, because actually that's something I'm not sure about. I suspect, but don't know. Hey, let's do a little test here. Disable this, because this is actually something I don't know, and I'll complete my thought in just a second. All right, thank you for taking forever to compile. We're going to do this. Child test. Does OnEnable run on the children of things? Because this object here is sort of enabled in the editor point of view right away. Child test. So OnEnable. Debug.log child test. Like that. Debug.log colony view. Boom. Okay. Let's hit play. I mean, I think they'll both run, but I'm not entirely sure. So we'll enable this colony view child test. Disable. Enable it, colony view child test. Okay, that's good. Because what it means is we don't have to do, in colony views OnEnable, we don't necessarily have to update all the data elements there. Instead, the various child elements, right, the things that are there to like tell you the stats of your colony, they can just have their own script that is waiting for an OnEnable, then they update themselves like that. Which is good, because then you don't need a ginormous colony view script to do all the work for you. You break things down into individual little subtasks, which is perfect. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that, and I'm going to delete the colony view script as... No, not the colony view script. Well, it doesn't matter, actually, I guess, because we didn't do any real programming. I meant to get rid of the child test script, but oh well. There. I'll go back to being accurate about we're not doing programming, because I'm just going to remove everything, and that's going to be okay. And we don't know what how we're going to label our scripts and things, and we might want to give some think as to our coding organization. Do we want to use the word view, like galaxy view, colony view? Do we want to use the word screen? Again, I'm leaning slightly against screen, because there's a possibility that the system view may be something nested within galaxy view. I mean, I guess you could have something like system screen still being nested within the galaxy screen and only being effectively a window or something like that. I guess it doesn't really matter. But naming things, say they're... The three hardest things in programming are 1, naming things, and 2, off by 1 errors. But naming things are important because it helps your brain sort it. Like, your code doesn't care how things are named. You can just call everything foo, bar, baz, apple, orange, whatever. The code will still run, but it's important for us. So that's actually something that's worth vaguely considering. But I think this is a good organizational system for that. In terms of data organization, this is going to be something else to talk about. We are certainly going to use the sort of separation between the view side of things and the data side of things in here. And so what do I mean by that? I mean that the colony view, for example, really, we're not going to have one of these for each one of our colonies. We're not going to have, a bunch of these objects in here for each one of those colonies. We're just going to have one, and we're going to point it at a colony object, which will not be a game object. And in general, it's often helpful to have this separation. It's less important in games where they're more physically driven, where like like a first-person shooter, where you're walking around in a 3D environment or something like that, or a Skyrim or this, where like everything is sort of physically present as a game object, and then it makes sense that the game object also has your data. But here, we could have many different colonies, but we only have to show one at a time. We're not going to have them exist as game objects. Instead, we're going to have like some list somewhere, or some dictionary, or however the data will be organized, of all these colony objects of this special colony class. And we're just going to, for the colony view, same as we did in our little example before I deleted everything over here. Yep, reload. We're just going to point it at one, and there'll be that source of data. And that's going to be useful for our sort of game manager, our turn manager. I mean, certainly we will have some sort of core manager object. Probably like game manager I like. Although, well, that's the most descriptive name for something. I'm trying to, I need to come up with something else, because what happens when you're trying to type, it will often autocomplete. Like if you're trying to type game object or game manager, like it'll autocomplete for like the wrong one all the time. So not starting it with game makes sense. World manager, just the manager, like just manager period. App manager, maybe app manager would be okay. It's like a little thing, the autocomplete annoyance of game object, which is something you reference a lot, and game manager is a big pain in the butt. So let's come up with a better name for this. Maybe app manager. I don't know. That's dumb. Universe manager. Anyway, the idea is that this is the thing that holds all the data, and is probably also responsible for the user just hit end of turn, so process the turn, and then go to the next player, which will be an AI. We could consider multiplayer support for this. We're not going to start with that. We're going to, hopefully, between the right combination of event triggers and various things like that, and these sort of centralized sources of data like the universe manager, hopefully we will set something up that would actually not be that difficult to set up for multiplayer. But we're going to start with single player. But still, the universe manager is still going to deal with, okay, now it's the AI's turn. So do each AI turn in sequence, and then, we got back to the player's turn. Excellent. Then we are going to sit here and wait for input rather than just, feed it off to some sort of, excuse me, oh, it's early in the morning. Early for me anyway. Some sort of AI function to deal with that. So, yeah. So, the buttons that we have on screen, so there'll be interesting questions. Let's turn off the system view because, man, that is bright. These buttons, there'll be an end turn as well, I guess, which will effectively, it's not part of the bottom bar, I'm going to suggest. The end turn, because I don't want it to shove the grid over like that. Instead, the end turn button, I hate when it does that. There we go. End turn button is going to be in the bottom right corner like that, and it's just going to say something like end turn. Although this end turn button, we might do the thing that great 4X games do, where what it's doing, it's prompting you the next thing to do, right? Oh, you've got an idle ship. Click this to select the idle ship. Then once that's been issued commands, then it's reminding you, oh, you've got some research going, or there's a planet waiting for some stuff. And then finally, when all that stuff has been dealt with, then it just says intern and indeed does that. Now, that's probably what we'll do. We'll have that sort of overloaded button behavior, which is very, very, very handy and saves a lot of work for the human player. We might have over here some sort of outliner, right? It's the list of all your planets or ships or whatever, probably a little like tabs. So you can switch between show me all my planets in a list, show me all my ships in the list, show me something else. I don't know, relative empire power, that sort of thing, right? Some sort of score graph. And down here, we could have little events that pop up, either here or here. Games put it in different areas, but most strategy games will have a little something like that to let you know what's gone on. Planet finished its construction, and now it's building the next thing in the queue. That sort of thing like that. Yeah. So one of the big things that I think will come maybe perhaps a little bit later will be how to resolve combat. Are we going to do the Mu type thing where you actually have either some sort of real-timey thing or a turn-based tile system thing where the ships do combat? Do we want the player to be able to control that? Is just a cinematic, or not necessarily cinematic, but an automatically generated combat? There's a bunch of things there. So our first iteration will probably be, okay, 2 enemy fleets are in the same system and they want to fight. Okay, we'll like sort of roll based on their stats and just, deal with the winner that way. But then at some point develop that sort of greater combat module, because I personally like it. I don't usually control the ships. I like to automate the combat, but not like the simulate button. If there's a fight, in a lot of these games, you get a fight screen. You could either auto resolve it, or you could go into the actual combat. I don't like to hit auto resolve because I think a lot of times it just basically rolls some dice and see what happens based on your raw relative strength numbers. Instead, I like to go into the fight, and then I like to just hit auto at that point and let the AI, move the ships around and stuff, because I like to be an emperor. But I also like, for games where you get to design your own ships, I want to see the designs take effect, and I don't want the designs to just come out to like, okay, your ship is this strong versus this other ship that's this strong, so we're going to have both of you roll dice and add your strength as a bonus, and the higher number wins. I don't want that. I want the ship designs to actually be used, but I don't necessarily want to have to micromanage them. And so I'm perfectly happy with just automating those fights. And I think quite a few games have really moved that way, to the point where a lot of these 4X games don't even give you the option of directly controlling the fight. They're more or less just going to be automated and do their own thing. You might have a couple of things that you can do to influence things, but they'll show you the fight if you want. And I'm okay if the sort of quote-unquote simulate or auto-resolve button actually does the true simulation of the combat behind the scenes, but just accelerates it without the animation, so it goes really fast. That more or less is okay, at least after the first few times that I've seen and confirmed that, my ship design is sound or something. So, that'll be something, that's quite a bit further away. We've got a lot of little jobs to take care of before that. But anyway, I wanted to do this video with this sort of, again, this is a sketch. I'm not literally using, I'm not using Photoshop. I'm not using a pad of paper. But what this is effectively representing is a sketch of the ideas about the layout. And what does that mean? How are these things going to work? Probably the first thing we'll do is generate some sort of galaxy view. Basic things like the ability to zoom in, maybe. Oh, yeah. Zooms in here. That's just changing the scale inside of Unity. Pan around. Or maybe, some of these games, the galaxy view, maybe you don't need to be able to zoom in and out. I guess we'll probably want to go and implement those features. Maybe on the standard galaxy size, it'll be the right level of comfort and density where, listen, if you're just zoomed out to the point where you can see the whole galaxy, that's going to be perfectly fine. Maybe that's where we'll sort of baseline our quote-unquote normal galaxy size, because to me in Master of Orion 2, which again to me is my my baseline where I've had the most experience at, the fully zoomed out view was perfectly fine and comfortable to sort of like navigate from there. You'd see all the stars. I don't remember if the stars were labeled as is or if you moused over and then it showed you the star name. I don't remember. Maybe they were always visible. You could zoom in on the galaxy view in Mu 2, but it was kind of pointless. But so we might base our standard galaxy size with being the right number of stars so that when you are zoomed out to see the whole galaxy, the stars, they're not so close and so bunched up that you're uncomfortable. You know, there's just enough room for some text labels and things like that. And then we can offer a larger galaxy size, or even like a ridiculously large size where, okay, when you're zoomed out to the point where you can see all the stars, it's just too much, too dense to, you know, have text labels, and maybe the stars are squished up against each other a little bit, and so in effect you'll be spending more of your time zoomed in and only seeing part of the galaxy, which is okay. Although if we do that, we might want to consider a minimap. And actually, let me go, and with that in mind, I'll sort of reserve a little bit of space here. An image in the bottom left corner, which could probably be a little, I don't know, wider than that. Something like that. We'll also, whoops, 150 is what I meant to do. We'll also have to figure out things like, how do we want to deal with canvas scaling for different, you know, size screens and things like that? What does that mean for exact pixels versus whatever? A lot of times when I do my Let 'em Dare games, I am working with basically a fixed aspect ratio and designing for a certain size, and everything sort of just scales up and down, but it's not this fluid sort of thing. The fluid thing is kind of nice and supports different things. If you have a really high res monitor, maybe the font is really small, maybe we can offer a scaling option, which, I mean, you can do in the UI. Although one of the things that's a little funny is that we don't have a single canvas, so we may have to update all the canvases all the time when we change the scaling factor. We'll figure that out. Maybe we can do some sort of parent canvas, but maybe having all these sub canvases doesn't make sense. Maybe we could just have one canvas and all the views are within it. Actually, that might end up being the way we go. That might make a lot more sense. There are certain advantages to having, you know, multiple canvases. We can have a little bit more fine-grained control over various things, and especially switch between various screen space overlays and world space overlays. We shall see. Anyway, for dealing with stuff like this, where stuff starts to overlap, I mean, then there's all, like, as a web designer, what you would do is you would actually, like, take certain counts of metrics about the user's screen width and size, and basically like, okay, well, if our screen width is too small for some reason, then we disable the minimap, or we move the minimap, or we do something like that. We'll see. I mean, there's certain assumptions that you can say, like, probably the screens will be wider than this, because this is a true 1-to-1 pixel. This would represent a very small screen. Or, I mean, I'm not necessarily physically small. It could be a 30-inch monitor or something like that, but they're running at a supremely low resolution. Which maybe, I don't know. It's probably not something to worry about. As long as we design something that at least works at, say, 720p, right? 1080 by 720, and just set that as the minimum system requirements, that's probably okay. But yeah, it's something to consider as we go forward. Anyway, I want to wrap this up. So today is Friday, October the 5th, as I'm recording this. We are going to be doing some stuff on tomorrow's live stream. So tomorrow is going to be October the 6th, Saturday. And at noon, every Saturday, I do live streams. We're going to start with a discussion of Project Caprica on there. I don't think it's going to go overly long, but we're going to have a discussion about our plots and plans, our pots and pans, and where we might want to go and how we might want to approach things. I don't think, again, it's going to necessarily be a true programming stream, but we're going to have some important discussions before we dive into the project to an extensive amount. And because you sort of want to do some sanity checking as early as possible in the project to catch your very significant design issues from the start. I mean, a lot of things, no matter what, no matter how smart you are, you think you're being at the start of a project, you'll always end up refactoring a bunch of stuff. It's inevitable because you don't necessarily know the scope of everything, and certain, there's just going to be some issues that you're like, oh my God, I never realized that could be an issue, and that's going to be unavoidable. But if we can prevent as many of those as possible, the better. So come on out to twitch.tv/Quill18 October the 6th, Saturday, if you're watching this at real time, and we are going to have some more discussions about this and how we're going to organize this going forward. Thanks for watching, folks. See you next time.